A 17-year-old honors student is arrested and jailed because she missed too many days of school. I'm not kidding. This is a real story. What the blankety blank blank is going on? Is this government legitimate use of force? We're going to figure it out. Stand by for the front page. Joining me in studio, Don Watkins, a fellow at the Ayn Rand Center for Individual Rights, and Terry Jones, associate editor for Investors Business Daily. All right, Fox News is reporting, and they're the only ones who are reporting, and no one is denying that this is a true story. A 17-year-old honors student, Diane Tran, was jailed for missing more than 10 days of school in 6 months. That would be bad enough on its own terms, but the reason she didn't make it to class is because she is busy working 2 jobs to support her 2 younger siblings. Now, it's somewhat unclear what the family situation is. Clearly, the parents are not doing enough to support the children, or they're unable to. But the judge who sentenced Diane to spend 24 hours in jail, surrounded by some pretty unsavory people, he had this to say about the case. Quote, "If you let one run loose, what are you going to do with the rest of them? Let them go too? All these truant students out there wanting to miss class, what are we going to do? Let them go? We got to jail them all. We got to make an example of this poor girl, the honors student, the straight-A student who's working jobs to support her family." Terry, what do you think of this? This is nuts.
Those damn truants. It's about time somebody cracked down on this truancy problem we have, especially truancy among the honor students.
Yes. That's where the society's going to fall apart. We better clamp down on that one.
What does this action accomplish? It accomplishes nothing other than showing how foolish government can often be. Look, Texas has compulsory education laws, okay? Compulsory education laws are one thing, but I guarantee you, one of the excuses he said, well, if we let one go, we can't. What about the others? I guarantee you, if his grandson or his son were out for more than 10 days and 6 months, he would not appear before a judge and would not go to jail. So the notion that she had to go to jail is absolutely absurd.
Don, forget about this judge's lousy, insane, crazy use of discretion. Or there was no use of discretion, but underneath, you have this law that the state can jail a minor for not going to a state school that they're kind of forced to go to if you can't afford private school. What about that? I mean, I got a problem with that there's a judge even involved in being able to decide this.
Yeah, I mean, my reaction is, come on. Like, this is America. I don't think that the government has any role in dictating that children need to be in school, certainly not jailing them for failing to meet this standard. Look, that is the obligation of a parent, and if the parent fails, that's on his shoulders. But I mean, the notion that, well, you should be in school. It's funny. I just finished the memoirs of Steve Martin, and this is true of a lot of really successful people. He spent most of his time as a kid actually working in the industry that he was passionate about from the time he was 15, starting at Disneyland and so on. That is the kind of thing that actually, makes people very successful. This girl's doing that and getting straight A's in school. I mean, that's something that you should reward, not say, well, you should have your behind there because that's somehow intrinsically good.
Yeah, Terry, what are your thoughts in terms of this idea of compulsory public education? Because honestly, before I read the story, I didn't have in my head that there was compulsory public education. Like a parent could pull a kid out and homeschool. Yeah, you hear about this all the time. But Texas, they say you must go to a public school or I guess to some private equivalent. Yeah. And you cannot stay home. You can't go to work. I mean, it just seems.
It's one of those.
And this is Texas, which you normally don't associate with. This is a big government, oppressive government state.
It's one of those well-meaning laws because I think the people who pass these laws are fearful that large groups of young kids are going to be cheated out of their future because they'll be kept home and be made into virtual, house slaves or something. And so I mean, I'm a little bit sympathetic. But that said, the law that just makes it without any sort of flexibility whatsoever. There's no notion that, here's an honor student, 17 years old. We're not talking about an 8-year-old or a 5-year-old who's not learning to read. We're talking about a 17-year-old who's straight A student, probably going to go to a top college. To me, I think it's just excessive. And you look at other countries, and this is something that we might be able to copy, given that I don't think anybody's going to get rid of compulsory education attendance anytime soon. They need to have a law that's in some way flexible or that in some way permits it.
He had the discretion.
Yeah.
He could have said, young lady, try to get to school more often, but best of luck with your family. In a certain way, you're an example. I mean, the mindlessness, there's a certain, maybe Don, you can speak to this idea, once you get government involved in these decisions, you get more and more robotic decision making.
Yeah. Well,
it's just the inability to differentiate between one situation and another.
Well, first of all, just one thing in passing. Milton Friedman used to support compulsory laws, but then he actually looked at the history, what was education attendance like before them, and it turns out parents want their kids to be educated. So these laws are really unnecessary. But on that point, actually, what was the...
Well, it was just a sense of a compulsory education, and...
See, that's the thing. If government gets involved in some realm, it has one of two options. Either you can hand it discretion, in which case you open up the door to arbitrary, whim-based decisions, and that is completely destructive, or you make it super bureaucratic, in which case very often it leads to these insane kind of decisions.
I mean, in California, we have a similar thing with 3 strikes, which has a lot of injustice attached to it. You have the people who are not dangerous people who, I'm not justifying whatever they did to get their 3rd strike, but then they're going down to 25 to life for stealing a loaf of bread or something like that. And that's what I was getting at. That was really the question, was like that when you have heavy government intrusiveness, you get more and more injustice and more illogic and robotic decision making.
Not just that, but Don makes a very good point here, and that is they require you to go to school, and in essence, they require you to go to a state school. And there's no guarantee, based on what your taxes are or anything like that, that you're going to get a quality education experience. So they essentially force you to do something that may not benefit you.
Yeah.
And that is wrong.
Yeah. And what about, a final question here. What about her parents? Now, again, it's not quite clear what the situation is there, but let's take a hypothetical, different situation. The parents don't give a hoot. They're off, and their behavior is unethical. But this elder daughter is trying to make up for it by working, going to school, and doing this stuff. Do the parents go to jail? Is that something where the governments can step in and say, like, hey, wake up, what's going on? I'll let you finish off.
My view is that the only thing that the government should interfere with in terms of these relationships is actual abuse by the parent. I don't think there should be any mandate of going to school. So I think neither the child nor the parent in this case. Morally that parent, and I think her neighbors shouldn't deal with her if she's really being negligent.
In this case, the parents were split up. So you're really dealing with only one parent, and apparently that parent isn't fully employed.
Yeah.
The daughter is, but
Right.
she's not. So it's a very bad situation, and one she dealt with the only way she knew how to keep her family intact.
And thank goodness for this judge who made the situation that much better. An education in incarceration and the people you meet there. Oh my goodness. All right, for Terry and Don. I said it right, yeah. For a second I thought I said the wrong thing. Got to get more gin in my water. For Terry and Don, I'm Alan Barton. You've been watching Front Page.